Information discussed in this podcast may be sensitive in nature to some listeners. Listener discretion is advised. Tornadoes hit southern Georgia with a vengeance the weekend of January 21st, 2017. Not just one or two, but several devastating storms ripped through small towns, changing the Georgia landscape there forever. On January 22nd, 2017, one of those fierce storms tore through Albany, Georgia, and struck a mobile home park. This happened just after 3 o'clock p.m. Around 8:30 p.m., local authorities received a 911 call of a young boy who had gone missing during the storm. 2-year-old Detrez Green lived with his parents and siblings in one of the mobile homes at Piney Wood Estates, where the tornado had blasted through hours earlier. Immediately, law enforcement officers converged on the scene to search for the toddler. Detrez's mother, Adasia Rainey, told authorities that she was holding on to Detrez, but right as the tornado was striking their home, the boy got out of her arms and went towards the kitchen. The kitchen was an area of the home that was demolished by a fallen tree as a result of this storm. Searches uncovered no sign of the young boy, and investigators were becoming frustrated. The family couldn't provide a photo of the young boy, stating that they didn't have one. Extended family members and neighbors also claimed to have never seen this child. Some began to speculate that the boy might never have even existed, or perhaps something tragic had befallen the boy prior to their move to Piney Wood Estates. Where is Detrez Green?
Yeah, this tornado caused damage from one end of the county to the other. Officials say it is so widespread they still don't have a handle on the number of buildings destroyed during this storm. Now, I want to show you some video that we took within the last hour. This is video of the Piney Woods mobile home parks. We walked through there, and let me tell you, the destruction was incredible. I saw just piles and piles of rubble. I couldn't even tell that were at one time they were just someone's home. It was so difficult to tell. Now, one trailer particularly was heartbreaking. It was the trailer of the Green family. The family was huddled in the trailer together when the tornado hit. The parents say their 2-year-old son, Detrez, has been missing since that storm. And we were there this morning when crews gathered around that trailer to look for the little boy.
And we're setting up a tight grid search east of the debris field to see if we can try to locate the missing infant. We've got 5 teams out, and we're working 100-meter blocks out and back and keep progressing north.
Now, county officials say that Detrez is the only official missing person. They have
Hello, and welcome back to the Where Are They podcast in another unsolved missing persons case. The case of Detrez Green came recommended to me a while back, and it's really a story unlike any other that we've talked about. The story of Detrez Green is a mystery that has haunted South Georgia residents for 7 years now. Was this young toddler a victim of a vicious and terrible storm? A tornado with wind speeds of up to 155 miles per hour that had ransacked the entire area, picking up cars and even homes. If this storm could pick up a car, certainly it could have picked up a 2-year-old child. But as investigators and searchers spent days and days searching for this boy, they would learn some very troubling details. Thank you so much for being here, for listening to the story of Detrez Green, and for helping us raise awareness for this little boy. I do want to give a huge welcome and shout out to our newest Patreon member, Maureen. Thank you so much for your support of our mission and for helping us cover as many of these missing person cases as we can. You can find our Patreon link, our social media links, and my contact information in the show notes. You can also find all of this information along with past episodes and even additional missing person stories over on our website at wherearetheypodcast.com. Now let's get into the baffling and tragic story of Detrez Green. Detrez Green was born October 28th, 2014 to mom Adasia Rainey and dad Kevion Green. Now Adasia and Kevion had a troubled relationship. In 2014, the couple was living in Ashburn, Georgia with their children. There was an incident one day that would bring the police, including a SWAT team, out to their home. There was a standoff, and allegedly Kevion was keeping Adasia and the children in the home. There isn't much information out there about this incident. It seems that Kevion was arrested, but would later be released and never charged with any crime. Kevion does have a history of domestic violence and other small misdemeanor charges, however. Now, even after this incident, Kevion and Adasia remained together, but the Department of Children's Services would get involved with their two children. Detrez would be born later that year. Kevion and Adasia had some more issues in Ashburn, but they would eventually move to the Piney Wood Mobile Home Park in Albany, Georgia, 45 minutes away. In January of 2017, tornadoes hit southern Georgia with a vengeance. This was a particularly volatile month for tornadoes in Georgia. In fact, the whole southeastern part of the United States. There were so many storms in that area on the weekend of January 21st to 22nd. There is an entire Wikipedia entry dedicated to those tornadoes and those storms that hit the South on those days. Here's what that entry says about this weekend. Quote, "A prolific and deadly winter tornado outbreak struck areas across the southeast United States between January 21st through January 23rd, 2017. Lasting just under 2 days, the outbreak produced a total of 81 tornadoes, cementing its status as the second largest January tornado outbreak and the third largest winter tornado outbreak since 1950. Furthermore, it was the largest outbreak on record in Georgia, with 42 tornadoes confirmed in the state. The most significant tornadoes were 3 F3 tornadoes that heavily damaged or destroyed portions of Hattiesburg, Mississippi, and Albany and Adel, Georgia. A total of 20 people were killed by tornadoes, mainly during the pre-dawn hours of the outbreak, making it the second deadliest outbreak in January since 1950, behind the 1969 Hazelhurst, Mississippi tornado outbreak that killed 32 people. Total economic losses from the event reached at least $1.3 billion. End quote. Kevion and Adasia and their 3 children were living in the mobile home park in Albany when these storms hit. There were initial warnings to evacuate or to take some precautions or take cover as there were tornadoes on the ground. There was a little bit of warning, something you don't always see with tornadoes. But for whatever reason, Adasia and Kevion ignored those warnings. The disappearance. Sunday, January 22nd, 2017, was a day that residents of Albany, Georgia would never forget. That afternoon, residents in Albany were warned that a tornado was on the ground. Adasia Rainey and Kevion Green were at home that day with their 3 young children, and at first they said they weren't too concerned about the storm. They thought they could handle it. They had spent that day watching television together and cooking. Until 3:15 p.m., that is. The winds were pulling their trailer home apart, and Adasia knew it was serious. She grabbed her 2-year-old son, Detrez, and tried to hang on to him. but at the last second he pulled away from her and ran to the kitchen just as a large tree fell onto the home. These storms were record-breaking, and this in particular tornado would be rated an F3 and would see winds of up to 155 miles per hour. It was extreme chaos after the tornado hit. The town would experience damage like never seen before. People were running around looking for family, friends, pets, and neighbors. Cars were left overturned, furniture and debris littered the area, and trees were ripped right out of the ground. There were power outages all over the area, and emergency services were out in droves helping. This particular tornado would stretch for 71 miles and would ultimately be responsible for several deaths in that area. A few hours later, actually about 5 hours after the tornado occurred, Adasia makes a call to law enforcement to report her son, Detrez, missing. He had disappeared during one of the area's worst weather disasters. Detrez Green had vanished. The search. The 911 call from Adasia was concerning from the start. The dispatcher said Adasia didn't seem to be overly concerned about her missing toddler. Because she claimed Detrez had been missing for several hours, the dispatcher asked her if she had already been out searching for the little boy. Adasia said that she had looked around for a bit, but not all over. The dispatcher asked her if she alerted any emergency personnel at the mobile home park that her son was missing. Adasia said she had not. Adasia would also say later that they asked everyone in the park to gather at the front, and that's what she did. She took her family to the front, meeting up with neighbors and other residents, never telling anyone that her young son was missing. Upon getting the call that a young child was missing, law enforcement responded right away. If he had been injured in the tornado, time was of the essence, and he was only 2 years old. They were already late to start searching since more than 5 hours had passed. Authorities immediately pound the pavement, start searching, and some start speaking to Adasia and Kevian. They ask for a photo of the young boy, but the parents don't have one. Their phones were also lost in the rubble of the storm, and previously the only photo that anyone apparently could come up with was one that was posted on social media of Detrez when he was an infant. The entire area was searched that first night, but no signs of the boy were found. Emergency personnel at first concentrated near the mobile home, since Detrez was last seen entering the kitchen, which is where the tree had fallen. If Detrez was in the kitchen, he was likely still there, trapped somewhere, possibly under that tree. They searched for days but found no signs of the little boy. Searchers indicated if he was in that tornado, he must have been swept away, because if he would have been there in that mobile home still, they would have found him. There was a pond not too far away, and on January 25th, 3 days after the tornado hit, they sent divers in to look for Detrez. By now, Detrez Green was the only person missing and unaccounted for after the weekend of storms. Divers didn't find anything, however, so pumps were brought in, which ran all through the night to drain that pond. Still, nothing was found. Meanwhile, people were becoming quite skeptical of Adasia and Kevian's stories, and they weren't speaking to media, except for one brief interview Kevian had with CNN. It was noticed by many that the couple wasn't overly concerned with finding Detrez. Remember, it also took 5 hours to report him missing, and this was after they had told their neighbors and other emergency personnel in the mobile home park that they didn't need any help. They didn't need any assistance. GBI, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, was asked to come in and assist. They, however, stated there wasn't much they could do to help without a photo of the boy. How do you search for a missing person when you don't know who you're looking for? It was a highly unusual circumstance to have a missing person case with no associated photographs. The family of Kavian and Adasia also came forward to speak up, many saying that they have also never seen Detrez Green themselves. They weren't sure what was going on. Kavian's brother was one of the few who spoke up to defend his brother, and allegedly an aunt of Adasia also spoke up for the couple. Other family members, however, had as many questions for them as law enforcement and the public did. On January 26th, officials changed the status of the search for Detrez from a search and rescue to a search and recovery. For a few days, it was much of the same. Searches were still happening all around Albany for this little boy. Multiple units, search and rescue personnel, and different departments were out there searching for Detrez. On January 31st, things would take a turn. Law enforcement turned their efforts toward Adasia and Kavian's former home in Ashburn, Georgia. A search, including digging up the yard, began, with many wondering why. Nothing much was said on that from officials. They did say it was in relation to a missing person case, and many knew that that was the former home of Detrez Green and his family. Nothing much was said on that search from officials. It was believed to have happened because nobody at the Piney Woods mobile home park, including neighbors of the family, had said they had never seen Detrez in the entire time that the family lived there. Of course, began to wonder if Detrez was ever at Piney Woods in the first place. Had something maybe happened to Detrez back when they lived in Ashburn? Was the tornado just a convenient excuse? It isn't believed anything was discovered at that home in Ashburn to provide any additional clues as to what happened to Detrez or where he was. Others now even began to wonder if Detrez had ever even existed at all. No one had any photos of the boy except for this mysterious infant picture, which several people pointed out could have been a picture of anyone. Even family members of Kavian and Adasia had admitted to having never seen the child before. Some speculated that he was made up in an attempt to collect benefits for him. This case suddenly became very confusing. Shortly after, Kavian and Adasia's other two children were taken into protective custody. Albany, Georgia. Albany, Georgia sits in the southwest corner of the state of Georgia, not too far actually from the Florida and Alabama borders. The closest big city looks to be Tallahassee, Florida, and that would be just under a 2-hour drive. Albany has a population of just around 67,000 residents. Running right through the city is the Flint River, a 344-mile river known for its diverse habitats and species. This is South Georgia, and there are tons of creeks and ponds also throughout the entire area. I think we also have to take a look at Ashburn, Georgia, where Kavian and Adasia lived prior to moving to Albany. Ashburn is a small town about 45 minutes to the east of Albany. Ashburn has a population of just over 4,000 residents, a much smaller town. The house that Adasia and Kevin lived in was located at 1006 Pine Knot Road. This is a residential area, but the houses are fairly spaced out. The home does sit on the corner of Pine Knot Road and East William Street. There are other houses around, but there's also a field across the street, and there's plenty of trees and tree cover in the area. But again, authorities have searched that home and the property and did not find any signs of Detrez, at least nothing that we know about. Law enforcement has not said much about this case. Often, when asked, they respond with no comment, leading many to believe that they know what happened or they think they know what happened, but they lack the evidence to proceed with any charges or to make any type of announcements to the public about what happened to Detrez Green. This one is so confusing, and I had so many questions. Nothing seems to make a lot of sense. We went from a missing child in a tornado to a possible situation of foul play to did this child even exist in the first place? Lack of communication from authorities and the family, who has remained completely quiet during this entire time, makes it all the more baffling. The questions. We have so many, and I am very curious to hear what questions you have. Here are a few that I have. First, do we have any birth records of Detrez, a birth certificate? Some reports have stated that law enforcement was unable to match one to him, but that was in reports and not directly from authorities. I'd have to think that this is one of the first things that law enforcement would investigate, especially when the question of Detrez's existence even comes up. I'm also curious about Child Protective Services. They became involved with the family back in 2014. Did they not do any follow-ups or checks on the family? Remember, Detrez was born, allegedly, at the end of October in 2014. It would seem that Child Services would still have to do some type of monitoring at that time. Did anyone from Child Services see Detrez? Can they confirm that he existed? And what happened with the Child Protective Services case when the family moved from Ashburn to Albany? I also wonder, on the day of the tornado, why did Adasia and Kevion wait so long to report Detrez missing? Was the tornado just a convenient excuse that they didn't think of earlier? Is that why they told neighbors that they didn't need any help? Is that why they didn't ask for help from emergency personnel on site near their home right after the tornado hit? How did no one else see Detrez in 2 years? Did any family members offer insight to this? Grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins. What about friends? Was there always an excuse as to where Detrez was? Or were Adasia and Kevion estranged from most of their family? This is one of the most bizarre cases we've covered. Please let me know what questions you have. You can comment over on our social media. I'm very curious to hear what you all think about this one. I can't share much in the way of a description. This is usually the point in which I would tell you what Detrez looked like, a description to watch for, what are we looking for in this missing person case, but we just don't know. All I do know is that he's African American and was believed to have been 2 years old when he was last seen by his parents only in January of 2017. And it is said that his birthday was October 28th, 2014. If you do, however, have any information on the case of Detrez Green, you are asked to contact the Dougherty County Police Department at 229-430-6600 or Crime Stoppers at 229-436-TIPS. The fact that we have no photos of Detrez, the fact that we don't have anyone else who knew this child, the fact that it is possible that something very bad happened to Detrez well before the tornado, and the fact that some believe this child might not even exist is beyond tragic for everyone. That weekend of tornadoes caused over $1 million in damages just in that corner of Georgia, and over 6 figures was spent searching for Detrez. Thank you so much for listening to the story of Detrez Green today. I don't think we should assume that this boy might not have existed, because that would mean we have to give up the search. It is still possible, as far as we know, there is a young boy out there missing who needs to be found. As always, I appreciate every single one of you who listens to these cases and helps us spread awareness. If you have a case suggestion for us, possibly one from your hometown or one that you believe needs more exposure, please send that over via email at canwefindthem@gmail.com. You can also reach me via our social medias. Those links are always in the show notes or through our contact form on our website that can be found at wherearetheypodcast.com. Thank you for being here and listening to the story of Detrez Green. The stories of children are always the most difficult to talk about, and the case of Detrez Green is tragic, confusing, baffling, and sad. Please share his story any way that you can. This is still an open case and an open investigation. We need answers on the whereabouts of Detrez Green. We need to know what may have happened to this child. We need justice for this child if something did indeed happen to him. We will be back again very soon with another unsolved missing persons case. And until then, stay safe and hug your loved ones.